Here's your news for November 21st, 2019. We've got some news from the National Wrestling Alliance to start today's video, as Jim Cornette has stepped down from his position on commentary for NWA Power. This news comes after Cornette used a racially insensitive line about black people during the most recent episode of the program, which led the NWA to take down the episode and make a quick edit to mute what he said. This isn't the first time Cornette has spread controversy, as earlier this year he made light about suicide during comments on NWA Power, has used homophobic and transphobic slurs when describing wrestler Sonny Kiss, and infamously spoke about wanting to kill Vince Russo, saying that if he could get away with the murder, it'd be the greatest accomplishment of his life. Since the most recent episode of Power was pulled, several fans have wondered how the insensitive line made it into the show in the first place. And while we don't know what Cornette's next actions will be from here, one fan suggested that the former manager should join WWE Backstage on Fox. This idea quickly got shut down by Paige, one of the stars of the show, who said, "Nah, we're good, as the former Divas champion has had enough controversy already in her career." Backstage co-host Renee Young also said that it was a hard no from her as well, while Cornette said he will be discussing what happened on the next episode of his podcast, The Jim Cornette Experience. Not only that, Cornette also has a second podcast called The Cult of Cornette, so fans will still get to hear plenty from the controversial figure, just not on NWA Power. Though Cornette won't be joining WWE Backstage anytime soon, the shocking return of CM Punk has had a huge effect on the entire WWE, especially Seth Rollins. On this week's episode of the show, Punk was asked what advice he had for the Architect, who has suffered fan backlash this year, and suggested that Rollins delete his Twitter as soon as possible. He said, "Seth needs to stop tweeting and realize that sometimes it's better to be viewed as the fool when you shut your mouth than to open your mouth and remove all doubt." It's no secret that Rollins' actions on social media haven't exactly helped the top babyface of the WWE, as he got into a Twitter spat with Will Ospreay earlier this year, which culminated in the Beast Slayer comparing bank balances in a very petty move. Rollins was obviously watching the show, as he ironically took to Twitter to comment on Punk's words, branding the former world champion a coward. Given that the Beast Slayer tweeted this response, it's clear that Rollins isn't taking Punk's advice, as many fans still hope for a match between these two. More news from Backstage, as Punk made his views clear on plenty of topics, including what happened last week on SmackDown Live. Discussing the segment which saw King Corbin embarrass Roman Reigns with a man in a big dog costume, Punk said that the less said about the awkward angle the better, but added, "You can't possibly defend that. The creative is bad. I don't know anything about Baron Corbin, he's one of the newer guys, I gotta check him out, but that's a bad start." Punk looked over at Paige and said, "It was garbage, right Paige?" Punk was also quick to criticize the new Universal title design, but when he tried once again for Paige to agree with him, the former SmackDown GM said Punk was trying to stir the pot. It wasn't just negativity from Punk though, as he did say he's looking forward to the WWE title match between Rey Mysterio and Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series, two opponents he knows plenty about. After nearly 6 years away from WWE, fans obviously wanted to hear what Punk had to say, and this was reflected in the viewing figures of the show. The first episode of Backstage did just 50,000 viewers, which rose to 100,000 thanks to Punk's shocking appearance at the end of episode 2. This week, the number again climbed to 180,000, according to Showbuzz Daily, making this week's edition the most viewed episode since the show began as a weekly program. WWE may have been able to rope in fans with Punk's return, but only time will tell whether they stick around next week. After all, now that WWE has given fans the return of the best in the world, something that fans have been asking for years, we can't help but wonder what WWE can do next to avoid a drop in viewers. Over to Raw now, and Dio Maddin hasn't been seen since he was attacked by Brock Lesnar on the November 4th edition of the Red Brand, and fans have been wondering what is the status of the former 205 Live commentator. Despite Samoa Joe filling in for Maddin this week, PW Insider reports that Dio is still very much a part of Raw's announce team, and there are no plans to permanently replace him. The report reads, "For those who have asked, Dio Maddin is still, as of today, officially part of the Raw broadcast team. He's currently off TV selling the Brock Lesnar attack. Maddin will likely be back on WWE soon enough, perhaps even this Sunday at Survivor Series, and we have to give WWE credit for putting over just how dangerous the reigning, defending WWE champion can be." We're looking at WWE's new podcasting network next, as after the success of After the Bell with Corey Graves, the company have announced their second program. The New Day, Feel the Power, will be the second show as part of the WWE Endeavor podcasting family, and is set to debut on December 2nd, obviously hosted by the reigning SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Given that After the Bell is released on Wednesday, it's likely that the New Day Feel the Power will be released on Mondays, as the company is slowly filling up the week, allowing new content for fans to listen to every single day. We've got some legal issues brewing now between WWE and AEW, as this contest outside of the ring is all over the term Bash at the Beach. This week, the new promotion revealed their January 15th episode of Dynamite in Miami, Florida will be called Bash at the Beach, a reference to the classic WCW pay-per-view of the same name. Given that the name is part of WCW history, fans immediately thought that WWE would own the name, but it's actually Cody Rhodes who owns the term after filing for copyright in March this year. This isn't the only term the AEW founder owns, as he also owns terms such as Dusty Rhodes, The Match Beyond, and The American Dream. It's interesting that The Match Beyond is owned by Rhodes, as that is technically the second half of a WarGames match, and even though Cody has joked about trademarking WarGames from WWE, that seems highly unlikely. On Twitter, the grandson of a plumber hinted that WWE had asked him not to use the name, saying, "Feels like I'll be going to court docket quickly, time to go swimsuit buying." It'll be interesting to see whether this dispute does end up in the courtroom, as we can only imagine what numbers the real-life legal drama could do on FITE TV. Speaking about WarGames, WWE NXT will have their annual NXT TakeOver WarGames show this Saturday, and Triple H recently had a conference call ahead of the show. When asked about the recent flurry of superstars requesting the release, the game said that many were doing it publicly to get clicks, and he said that backstage issues regarding contracts should be handled backstage, not on social media. He said, "It's a maturity issue and not how you handle it. You handle your business like a professional." This comment will certainly draw the ire of stars like Sin Cara and Luke Harper, who both publicly requested the releases in 2019. In Harper's case, he'll be free to leave in a few months when his contract expires, while others have years left on their deals and are stuck until WWE decides otherwise. As previously reported, there's been a push in WWE this month to allow unhappy wrestlers to leave, though some backstage, most likely Vince McMahon, do not want to grant releases. Dave Meltzer reported last week that WWE may release stars who they feel won't be signed or make a difference in AEW. It's hard to criticize WWE for being cautious when releasing stars, as former talent like Ty Dillinger and Dean Ambrose have gone on to do great things in the new promotion as Shawn Spears and Jon Moxley respectively. We don't know whether WWE will end up allowing unhappy superstars to be released from their contracts, but what we do know is that the war between the two promotions is growing every month. During that same conference call to promote WarGames, the Cerebral Assassin was asked about Survivor Series, and given the amount of championship triple threat matches, was asked why there wasn't a match between Brock Lesnar, Bray Wyatt, and Adam Cole. In response, Triple H said how a contest pitting the WWE Champion, the Universal Champion, and the NXT Champion would have been great, but the idea was eventually nixed for storyline reasons. The game explained that WWE couldn't step away from the Lesnar vs. Mysterio match and said that it didn't make sense for The Fiend to become a loyal SmackDown soldier, saying that the top SmackDown star works much better in his own storylines. When asked about his participation in Survivor Series, the game said he has no interest in working the event, but did promise a huge surprise for Team NXT, as one spot of the group won't be revealed until the day of the show. There's no shortage of superstars who could make their debut at the show, including injured stars like Johnny Gargano and Velveteen Dream, while NXT trainer Shawn Michaels could be a possibility, as a 15-man match would certainly be easier for the two-time Hall of Famer. Ultimately, the only man who knows what will happen is Triple H himself, and it seems he's keeping his cards close to the chest ahead of this Sunday's huge pay-per-view. We've got some news from Alicia Fox for fans next, as the former Divas champion has had some very public issues with alcohol, and this week set the record straight. On Instagram, Fox described herself as a few months sober, which is great news for her and her fans, who have been worried about what could happen to both her career and life. In March this year, Fox reportedly refused to go to rehab after getting into a drunken argument with Arn Anderson, and in August was sent home from SummerSlam in Toronto for getting into an altercation with a fan, again because of alcohol. Debuting on WWE's main roster over a decade ago, Fox is one of WWE's longest tenured superstars, so it's great to see that she's doing better with her personal issues. We're focusing on the Wednesday Night Wars next, as the men and women of the Gold brand had their final chance to make an impact before both TakeOver WarGames and Survivor Series this weekend. In a huge opener to the show, Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch made her entrance flanked by security, but the impromptu match between her and Rhea Ripley went to a no contest after interference by NXT Women's Champion Shayna Baszler and her crew. In another cross-promotional match, NXT scored themselves a huge win when Matt Riddle defeated Ricochet, after the former US champion attacked Riddle's original opponent, Kona Reeves. Despite a distraction by Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro, Riddle was able to get the win, and NXT had similar success when the Undisputed Era's Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly faced the Revival. In a trend of the show, the NXT stars overpowered the Invaders, as Fish and O'Reilly got the win in non-title action. In women's division action, NXT UK champion Kaylee Ray defeated Dakota Kai, which was followed by a huge brawl from all three brands. In a cool moment, Kairi Sane had a showdown with Io Shirai, but the end came when SmackDown's Nikki Cross, armed with a trash can lid, cleared everyone from the ring. In more tag team action, Raw's tag team champions the Viking Raiders got a big non-title win over the Forgotten Sons Steve Cutler and Wesley Blake when Ivar pinned Cutler in this hard-hitting bout. After so much invasion and cross-promotional matches, it was good to see the main event of the show be solely an NXT affair, as NXT champion Adam Cole faced Dominik Dijakovic in a ladder match with some huge stakes. A match that would determine which team would get the advantage in this Saturday's WarGames. It was Cole who got the win, meaning his team will always have the same amount of wrestlers in the ring or one extra. Though this is a huge win for Cole, his joy didn't last long, as he was on the receiving end of a super kick by Seth Rollins, who received a mixed response from the crowd, and after brawling with Tommaso Ciampa, that was all the time left for this huge edition of NXT. While NXT was being invaded by Raw and SmackDown though, AEW Dynamite was taking place on TNT, as Rey Fenix defeated Nick Jackson in the show's opener. Receiving a standing ovation before they had even locked up, the finish saw Fenix hit a muscle buster for the pin and refused a handshake post-match by Jackson himself. In a surprising result, Hikaru Shida defeated Britt Baker in women's division action, getting a win after a running knee, which is surely going to put her name in the hat for future challenges for AEW Women's Champion Riho. After a recruitment video for the Dark Order, MJF and Hangman Page emerged victorious after a Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal, which also featured the return of Billy Gunn, and though the pair emerged victorious, a pull-apart brawl afterward made it clear that they are not on the same page. Up next, fans saw a promised announcement by World Champion Chris Jericho, as the top star said he will be hosting the greatest celebration party in the history of wrestling, but not this week. Interrupted by SCU, Scorpio Sky recounted Jericho's first loss in AEW on last week's show, and these words quickly turned into a brawl involving the Inner Circle. After Jericho promised Sky a title match next week, he proceeded to lay Sky out with a Judas effect, sending a message to his challenger. In a quick squash match, Luchasaurus defeated Peter Avalon in seconds, and Private Party also made quick work in defeating Proud and Powerful. In the main event of the show, Jon Moxley faced Darby Allin, who arrived to the ring in a body bag. In an unsurprisingly physical match that saw both men bite the other, Moxley was able to hit the second rope paradigm shift for the win, as AEW ended with Moxley celebrating in the ring. We've already mentioned that next week's Thanksgiving Eve edition of Dynamite has a huge title match planned between Chris Jericho and Scorpio Sky, but the show in Chicago already has more scheduled. After the events of the Dynamite Dozen Battle Royal, MJF and Hangman Page will face off in the finals for the Dynamite Diamond Ring, while Cody Rhodes will make his first appearance since being attacked on Dynamite 2 weeks ago. Being assaulted by MJF and Wardlow, Rhodes will no doubt be hungry for revenge, though it's unclear whether he'll be wrestling or doing a promo. In a rematch from All Out, Kenny Omega and Pac will face off one more time, as next week's show is shaping up to be a night of must-see television for all wrestling fans.